All right, good morning, good evening, good night. Welcome back to the Nifty Q Show. We're interviewing founders, leaders, and builders in the non-fungible token industry. Today I'm sitting with Ben Topkins, co-founder of Block Tackle. We'll be diving into the NFT gaming sector, why his team is choosing to build on Solana, what the next gen of play to earn looks like, and much more. Hopefully we don't have any background noise here as Ben comes in, although, I am jealous that you're out in San Francisco, man. How are you doing on this beautiful Thursday?
Doing well. Yeah, very glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, big kudos to that setup as well. You don't. I think we're okay with the background noise, so you don't need to mute every time. You're fine to leave it open. But yeah, it's great to have you. Really excited to dive into SkateX, the sports MMO that you are building on Solana. NFT gaming, man, it's my favorite sector. I'm excited for the next generation, man, of all that stuff. So, how are you doing in this bear market, by the way? Before we get started into the deep stuff.
It definitely hasn't been a boring time, that's for sure, for any of us. But we raised our seed round just earlier this year, and so we had sort of come of age during the bull times, and are now, luckily I think our plan had always been that we're building a game with a core team of game builders, and we're really trying to build for the long haul something that has utility for years to come. So. The strategy still works, and we're going to stick it out with you guys.
I love it, man. The NFT gaming sector has come a long way here in like the last 2 years, and even the terminology has to be evaluated. I feel like we're coming into this next wave. Is it, and I'm going to hit you with a lightning question like right off the bat, is it Web3 gaming, NFT gaming, play to earn gaming, Web3 gaming? Like, what is the terminology you're using for this next piece?
I think it might even be Metaverse gaming, and the ownership piece is facilitated by blockchain technology. Because it's not, a game is not just fun because it's on blockchain. So I feel like it's tough to say that Web3 gaming is the only way to talk about it. It's a game that leverages blockchain chain technology to deliver extra utility to the players so that they can own a piece of the pie.
Love it, man. Ownership and all the above. I appreciate that. So I want to get into your background real quick. You have a phenomenal background. Your team in general has a really cool, experience level, and that's what you're kind of seeing in this NFT space as we get to that next level that the games need to be at. Traditionally we've seen a lot of web browser games, maybe I don't want to throw any shade at trading card games because I'm a Hearthstone player, but we just need to get to that next piece.
Hearthstone's great.
Yeah, exactly, man. So let's dive into your background, man. Tell me about you personally. Were you a gamer? Are you a Hearthstone gamer yourself? Just tell me a little bit about Ben.
I've played plenty of Hearthstone, but growing up, this was a big part of the inspiration for getting into SkateX, but growing up, definitely played a lot of, the classic PlayStation, Nintendo games. And one of my favorite games growing up was Pro Skater 3 from Tony Hawk and Activision.
Salute.
And so and I know that was sort of my entire generation of, guys grew up playing that game. And so our entire team was inspired by that and by a lot of the other extreme sports games that, especially for those of us who are not great at extreme sports in real life, sort of offered the opportunity to experience that flow of, 1080 snowboarding or SSX or the EA Skate franchise and Tony Hawk.
You're telling me you're not a good skateboarder?
I would never tell you that. No,
Okay.
I definitely am not not a good skateboarder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a game here. You did a previous NFT or a podcast with someone talking about NFTs. I'm not sure that they were, Web3 native or anything, but Kingdoms of Camelot came up, and like your work at your previous studios and this idea of like gaming cycles for players, I thought was like a really cool, kind of conversation that you guys had. Can you kind of dive into that, like as maybe a person who's coming more from the Web 2 side now coming into Web 3 and saying this is what we can offer gamers?
Yeah, so our whole core team worked together at a company called Kabam back in the early days of mobile in 2012 on the game that you mentioned, Kingdoms of Camelot, which was the top grossing app on the App Store in 2012. And it was an empire building game where you build up your city, you build up your armies, and then it's a super social game where you go out and attack with your alliance and raid resources from other players. And people would spend 5 to 7 hours a day playing this game with their friends for years at a time. But when they got to the end of the cycle of this game, and not to pick on Kabam, there were a lot of free-to-play games that had similar styles. But when you got to the end of that cycle, there was nothing you could take with you to the next gaming experience. You couldn't sell your castle, you couldn't sell your troops unless it was against the terms of service on eBay, which plenty of people did. But we're not seeing free-to-play or Web2 publishers take that leap because it's a difficult jump for them to make. It wouldn't necessarily translate to more revenue for them to immediately switch over the models of their existing games. But our hypothesis is that we can build a game from the bottom up that incorporates Web3 technology, where players then can cash in on the effort, time, and money they put into a game.
I'm interested in it just being in the NFT space and knowing that kind of feature set of being able to own your items and being able to sell it, and then going into mobile games that people played for 7 hours a day and couldn't monetize at all. Did you guys just make a killer game? Was it just they weren't making much money off of it? Were they just loving the actual gameplay and that's it?
Yeah, those players, it was crazy. You'd talk to some of these folks and they would have made friends for life from the alliances that they were in. Some of the folks we'd talk to were in the heartland of America. I'd never traveled internationally before, and they say, well, I finally went to Taiwan to visit this guy I was playing Kingdoms of Camelot with. We had people who got married to other folks that they met within the game. So there was a lot of value to be had, but it just wasn't in a monetary sense, right? There was enjoyment and then the connections, social connections with other people, which could still exist in a game that leverages blockchain, we believe.
Yeah, being number one on the App Store is no small feat by any means, and we're always chasing this North Star of mass adoption here in the Web3 space. What was that time at your company like when you guys were? Was that a big thing for you guys, or you guys just oh, this is on the roadmap? We were always going to be this successful.
It was huge. I mean, I think at that time, there were fewer players in the mobile space because there'd been this big platform shift, which a lot of us see as analogous to what's happening right now. And that's why, we wanted to be part of what's being built in the Metaverse and being built in the Web3 community. But at that period, I don't know if you remember, in the early days of mobile, a lot of gamers and a lot of game publishers were that's not where serious games are being made. Nobody's making really good games on mobile. And that turned out not to be true. I think, at that point, it was okay, what percentage of gamers are mobile gamers? And it was a low percentage. Now, every gamer you talk to has played a lot of a mobile game, right? So it was an exciting time. It did feel like we were building towards a new frontier in gaming.
I'm just jumping around a tad here. Solana came out with the Solana phone concept, which I really haven't, done my research on. Again, I'm familiar with Solana. We're, investors in Star Atlas, and can't wait for that game. I think Solana is going to do a lot of cool things. Rory is another one I want to give a shout out to. But what does the Solana phone mean for your company? Or do you guys have plans to utilize that by any means?
So Rob, my other co-founder, is especially, connected with Solana. He's been an entrepreneur in residence there. They invested in our company. But just on a personal level, I think what the Solana phone does is that it helps to push forward Web3 and mobile gaming and gives a platform through which we can build games that utilize mobile and utilize Web3 because, as you've seen, some of the major players, there are only a couple, in the mobile app store space have not been quick to adopt Web3. And so I think Solana is really creating that opportunity to start testing use cases, which will then be able to take sort of across the platform spectrum in mobile. Just
having your experience as a traditional game developer, not building in the Web3 space and then coming now into the Web3 space, which I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job of kind of building out the narrative that you are, at your core, having these features that anybody who's in this space wants to see. Is there any difference between mobile and, I guess, desktop web browser game studios? You mentioned what the mobile studios kind of being slow on this. Well, the desktop browser games, PC games have been slow as well. Are there any differences, just from your experience there, between how a studio that's developing PC as opposed to mobile would look at Web3?
I think the big difference right now is that mobile studios don't really have an avenue until the Solana Saga phone comes out. There's not an opportunity to build a Web3 game on the Apple App Store or on Google Play at the moment, based on the policies that they have out there. I think that's going to change. I know that they have folks who are working on that as we speak, that and are advocating internally, but these are big companies with, a lot of stakeholders in making those kind of decisions. And then the PC gaming community, I think that what they're looking for is, and there will be plenty of examples of this because we're not the only, game developers in the Web3 space who have experience. There are a lot of great companies that are coming to the market now and are building stuff. They're waiting to see proof points of what does a good Web3 game look like that's fun to play and that has legs that can last for years. And I think we're just starting to get to that sort of next phase that you were alluding to.
Yeah, and you guys are kind of positioning yourself earlier than a lot of maybe the later adopters, right? So what made you take the jump and say, hey, we're not going to wait for that like successful game, quote unquote, although we have seen like Axie Infinity is probably the best example. But what made you take the jump and say, hey, we're going to, build early in this space?
I think Rob and I and some of the other folks on the team had been playing around with NFTs in the Web3 space for, since 2016, 2017. Not the earliest adopters, but, in for a few years. And especially had been seeing like what Dapper Labs had done with CryptoKitties. And we started to see the potential for Web3 gaming. And our executive producer, Curtis, worked on another startup in the Web3 space. And as we were having these discussions, we just said, there is a real opportunity here for us to change that narrative of how players participate in the value created from games like we were talking about before. Players are definitely, if there are two games that are equally fun and one of them you can capture the value from and the other you can't, why aren't they going to go to that one? And so we just sort of saw this win state for the community that we thought was not ignorable. And then when we went to talk to VCs, there was this huge hunger for folks who had had experience building games who were excited about the Web3 space. And so it was just the right time and the right place, I think.
Yeah, you guys were definitely in at the right time as far as that funding round was concerned. Congratulations on that one, by the way. Have you noticed, although you guys aren't, again, I think raising any other rounds at the moment or anything like this, have you noticed a shift in maybe VC appetite or just like the feeling around maybe the gaming sector as we transition into maybe a bear cycle?
It's interesting in that we have seen a shift, but I would say that gaming is still an area that a lot of VCs are interested in because there's a clear narrative for utility for the holders of the Web3 assets, and people can understand, even if there haven't been a ton of great examples yet of like fun to play games that can last for years that have Web3 elements, people can grok like what that would be like. And so I think we're definitely still seeing interest from VCs, and they have a lot of money to deploy, and gaming is an area that they think is a promising sector for Web3.
I love it. I want to give a quick shout out to the chat really quick. Llama, Hash Rhymes, Asmodai, those of you that are showing up early here, we just pressed live about 5-10 minutes ago. I'm sitting here with Ben Tompkins, co-founder of Block Tackle. We're going to talk some SkateX stuff here. I want to give a quick shout out to the audio listeners on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can catch us there after the show. So, all right. So does that mean we're bearish on PFPs and things that maybe don't have like any inherent utility?
I mean, I think the best PFP projects they're coming up with ways to give utility to their communities too, right? Like they're not oblivious to the fact that they need to show their communities what they're going to be able to accomplish and the cool things that they're going to be able to unlock with this. So do I think the meta of massive NFT releases of PFPs is still going to continue at the same clip it's been at for the past 3 months? Probably not. But, I think there'll still be those outstanding sort of category leaders that manage to, capture people's imagination and still have hype going forward. But certainly for us, we're looking at, okay, what's the way that we can present these Web3 assets as having immediate utility for people? And that's why they're buying going forward as we build out the game.
I'm fascinated in this next step for our space, right? I'm a big proponent of NFT gaming. I do agree with you that there is this like light at the end of the tunnel for gaming. Like the narrative is not going to go away, and that's something that's going to eventually. It's not if, it's a when this stuff is going to actually take off. So I'm interested in this next step of the evolution into a next generation, quote unquote, for games, and where you see the improvements from this first cohort, the Axie Infinities. There's really not much else like that have gained mass adoption, but I'm sure I could like throw out a couple. But Axie Infinity, for example, like what are you taking from these first rounds of like NFT games and where we can improve?
Yeah, I think you hinted at it when we were talking earlier, and you said, like in those games that we built before, there wasn't necessarily a monetary reason for people to play them, but they still stuck around and came back day after day. We're looking to build games that are fun enough that they retain players in and of the gameplay themselves. And then the added benefit is that you're building assets that have value over time within the community. So, for example, in our game, which is going to be a skate MMO, it's a 3D multiplayer space where you have a bunch of people live in the server at the same time. We want to make sure that nailing tricks, competing in races is actually satisfying as a gameplay element, and that there are quests and challenges that you can complete that are rewarding even if you weren't making any money doing it, right? And so that's sort of the important differentiator, I think, from our perspective. And in that way, we can help to bring people who potentially have not had any experience in the Web3 space to try out the game. And then over time, as they become more and more engaged as users, they can say, oh, there's this deeper part that I can tap into, which is that I can have Web3 assets that I'm building up and then trade on the marketplace.
That's a great answer there. I want to talk about kind of the founding of Block Tackle and SkateX, and we can make our way into like the breakdown of what you guys got going on from like a collector's perspective, a gamer's perspective, like you mentioned. But take me through that timeline, man.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, like a number of us worked together. The core team worked together at Kabam in the early days of mobile free-to-play back in 2012. Since then, we kind of split up and got to a bunch of other free-to-play companies. We have folks from EA, Kabam, Lucasfilm, Roblox, Bethesda, Behavior, Supercell, among others. We're now at a 30-person team comprised of AAA game developers. So from 2012, we sort of went off and worked at these other game development companies. One of the co-founders, Rob, and I teamed up together. We got really excited about the metaverse, sort of closed garden metaverse of Roblox, and we built some Roblox games together there. So we did a Nerf shooter in partnership with Hasbro, an Angry Birds game in partnership with Rovio on that platform. And then we kind of came to the part where we started to get really excited about the Web3 sort of revolution. And that's when we started to think about this idea for SkateX, the extreme sports MMO.
I feel like sports MMO is not a game genre that I've ever heard. That might have been the first time I've ever even seen a sports MMO thrown out. Is that a like solidified genre, or are you guys like really taking that term and saying we're going to be one of the first to do so?
I think the simplest version is if we just said, hey, it's like Tony Hawk, but you have a bunch of other players live in the environment at the same time. So when we say MMO, it's massively multiplayer online in the sense that there are multiple people in the same server at the same moment. And so we find MMO to be a useful sort of heuristic for getting that out there. But I know some people hear MMO and they think of World of Warcraft and more hardcore RPG type games. But for us, the important part is like, we think the metaverse, a big part of that metaverse experiences is going to be expressing your social identity. It's going to be socializing with other people. We saw this a lot with the younger demographic on Roblox, which interestingly enough, I think is really going to be this generation that pioneers what they expect from social interactions in games, and having massively multiplayer online experiences for lots of different genres of games, which I think inherently makes them more fun, as humans just like socializing with other people when they're completing stuff.
There's probably such a large demographic of my age males, and I don't mean to like, I'm sure there were a lot of females that played Tony Hawk Pro Skater when it first came out, that Nintendo game. I remember being in the warehouse listening to Superman and Goldfinger and all that stuff, and I think that they would love to, if you could grasp those people and say, hey, remember that game that you played, Tony Hawk? Well, now you can go and chill and hang out in a social setting. I'm sure there's a large demographic there that you could pull from. So go ahead.
Yeah, I would say too, like the thing that was exciting to us is it feels like there's a large overlap between that demographic and the folks who are experimenting and sort of at the forefront of Web3 and the NFT space as well.
Absolutely, man. So tell me a little bit about the game set and the features and kind of where you're at here with what people can do now with SkateX and where you guys are planning on going in the future.
Absolutely. So we are building, as mentioned, a skating MMO space. The demo, we're closing in on being able to release that in the next month or so. So we'll be announcing that shortly, like when that's going to come out. And then you'll basically in that version, you'll be able to hop in, connect your Phantom wallet, and see the boards that you've purchased in the first couple mint drops that we had on Magic Eden and on Fractal. And then you'll be able to skate around and explore a space that we're developing for the first playable demo. And then beyond that, we'll be adding more quests and gameplay. So there'll be quests around hitting certain score thresholds and tricks, racing through an area of the map and hitting all the checkpoints in a given amount of time, and then social quests that you can complete with the other people who are live on your server at the same time. And then in terms of current utility, we're actually launching staking today. So we'll have that coming out. And basically what you get from staking, one thing is you're going to get our Web3 token grind, which is an SPL token, and that'll be usable as an in-game currency within SkateX. So you'll be able to use that to upgrade your board and complete some other actions within the game. And then there'll also be some randomized drops of other resources that you'll get for staking the boards as well.
Tell me a little bit about this this token and this in-game currency here, because that is a huge step for an NFT project, right? A lot of NFT projects maybe go at that too soon. They don't have the right undertaking. Tell me a little bit about how you guys went about the economics in the game and adding that important step, but also that really complex step of an in-game currency that's an SPL token.
Yeah, for us, it was important that if this is going to be a natively Web3 game, a lot of the resources within the game have to be Web3 assets. And so we wanted to come up with ways through which we can reward holders and people who stake and early adopters of the game through giving them something that gives them an advantage in the game. And so Grind Token, specifically is meant to be used in game. It's not meant to be, a money-making instrument for us personally or for the company. It's more so to reward people who are participating in the early aspects of the SkateX project.
So you guys have had 2 drops up to this moment. If I'm a new kind of user, maybe I missed those first 2 drops. Maybe this is the first time I'm hearing about it, or maybe if I participated, like what's the next piece that I can get involved in?
Yeah, so we're going to be launching staking later today, and then certainly there are some boards available on Magic Eden and Fractal if you want to get involved and start to accumulate grind. And then we'll have our playable demo, which we'll be announcing in the next month, where you'll be able to jump in and play around with the demo version of the game. We also, pro skater Stevie Williams is one of our advisors, and he may make a cameo in the game, which we're really excited about. He was also in the Tony Hawk series and is a co-founder of DGK, which is a skating streetwear brand and skateboard brand. And so we're looking for ways to partner with them as well and sort of like the lifestyle clothing elements for the avatar.
I think you guys are hitting on an important narrative with working with artists in the NFT space. I think artists are definitely like a foundation of the community when it comes to, working with projects, working with themselves, obviously as a single creator. But tell me about this partnership that you've done with I know I've seen 3, but I'm sure there's been more artists with these skateboards and having the decks be actually created by these artists and the process there.
Yeah, so for us as a team, it was important that we build something, especially if we're in the skating area, that we wanted to build something that was culturally relevant. So we went out and we said, okay, who are the cool artists in the skateboarding space and in the street art space that we want to partner with? And so we reached out to them. We have 4 partnerships, I believe, currently. One with Jimbo Phillips, who was part of the early Santa Cruz board designs, him and his dad. I don't know if you've seen the screaming hand with like the tongue coming out of it from the early Santa Cruz skateboards. He was one of the designers of that, and he designed some boards for us. We also have L'Amour Supreme, who's designed boards for, I think, Element, and then Novi, who's a street artist here in San Francisco who paints these really awesome koi, and Hydra 74, who's another skate artist who's designed some skateboards and snowboard art. So we're really excited about those partnerships too.
What's the music aspect or the audio aspect that's going to be involved in the game? Is there going to be, because I remember that's like a visceral response for me. Like I'm playing Tony Hawk, I remember the actual songs that I was playing as much as I, remember the characters.
Yeah, we've got Goldfinger pinned in our Slack, so we're
Dope.
we're definitely looking at how to do that. We're looking at a few different options for sound. Some of it is like stuff that we can get through some of the Web3 music streaming services, and then looking at other partnerships we can do there. But I 100% agree with you on all the extreme sports games. The soundtrack has been really key.
I got to say the network that we're building here within LADZ City, within NFT Live, we have a lot of creators in the NFT music scene that are also, I was having a conversation with Kane Mayfield, a really big character there in the NFT music scene. These artists also need to be, physical artists as well. It's not just I'm creating music, they create the actual art themselves as well. So maybe that could be a cool tie-in where you have people who are traditionally Web3 building not only something for the game in the forms of audio, but actual like physical art as well. That would be a sick combo.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely looking at IRL stuff would be really cool.
Yeah. Are you guys doing any upcoming events at all? Speaking of IRL stuff?
We're pretty heads down just in development at the moment, so we're working on that, but we'll definitely be looking for opportunities to do that in the future. I know Stevie, our pro skater, skating advisor, has been pushing us to check out some IRL events, so we'll definitely do something with him in the future.
Dope, man. I want to talk a little bit about Solana as well. You mentioned Phantom Wallet. You mentioned having this SPL token. These are all like some things that are native to Solana itself. How did you first get involved with the Solana ecosystem, and why choose that over maybe just going the traditional route of building on Ethereum?
Yeah, when we were looking at different chains to build on, it was sort of in the height of the craze too of ETH gas prices. So that was like one of the first indicators to us that if we want to have regular transactions in a game, that's just not going to work out, right? Like you're not going to be able to upgrade many boards per day, or participate in a lot of quests where you're earning Web3 rewards when you have to pay like $100 for every transaction. So at that time, that was like an automatic disqualifier for ETH. The other thing with Solana that we saw was just there were a lot of great game making teams. We're friends with like the Panzer Dog group. There are a number of others that are building some really cool stuff in the Solana ecosystem. And they were really welcoming and saying like, hey, let's build stuff together. Let's talk about this with each other and try and find solutions to use Solana-based tools to build awesome games, both for PC and for mobile. And so that aspect of it was really attractive to us. And then lastly, one of the objections we hear sometimes from prospective employees or folks who maybe are new to the Web3 space is they talk about the potential environmental impact of other chains. And it was just cool to have that Solana being carbon neutral was just a cool talking point, and felt good to us too, that we could bring to the table with Solana.
Yeah, you mentioned some other ecosystem projects that you maybe partnered with or have had kind of run-ins with. Fractal was being one of them. I think you guys worked with them to actually mint some of your NFTs. What are some other things that are going on in the Solana ecosystem these days, man? Because I get to interact with it sometimes, but I'm not like full heads down in it on the daily. So what are some other things going on within Solana?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of the big Solana PFP projects are working on like how do we do utility. We're talking to a lot of them about potential ways to integrate into our metaverse experience and potentially for us to integrate into theirs. We're big fans of the Lucky Cat, the Panzer Dog Studio, what they're building, the Space Runners group that did some really cool shoe drops, and looking for ways for us to partner on that. Dino Dogs, Drippies. So there are just a lot of really cool founders and projects that we're looking for ways to partner with.
Awesome, man. I've got a little bit more questions here on the specific project. You guys have a visual there of like a room or an apartment complex, or not, or just something that's like personally, of course, unique to the player. What, with your experience at Roblox and here, like building metaverses and metaverse experiences, what is this addition here that you guys are planning on having for SkateX?
We saw in those experiences in MMOs in general is that people really want to show off their unique digital identity. And so if you can give them a space in which they can build out sort of what their home presence would be or their lobby would be, and then other players can come visit it, see how they've customized it, the NFT boards and NFTs from other projects that they have up on the walls, the different sort of, like we have an arcade machine, I think, in that one, maybe mini games and things like that that they can play. Just giving them an opportunity to have a space they can own in this metaverse that really feels unique to them.
What are some experiences you bring from like Roblox? Because there's a lot of people, building metaverse-esque experiences here within the Web3 space, but maybe don't have your experience. What are some, big things that like metaverses need, for example, that maybe some projects are not getting right at this moment? Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think one area that folks in the Web3 space tend to intuitively get, and I think makes a lot of sense, is that people want to express a digital identity. So they've got a lot of, customizing the avatar look and feel. They've got ways that you can own land plot, maybe potentially ways to customize that. What I think we're going to have to see more of is possible social interactions. And they can be as simple as, throwing snowballs at each other, or, ways for people to compete in gameplay against their friends, whether that's in a casual way, in the lobby area, or whether that's in the the whole sort of core loop of the game. But easy ways for people to kind of interact with other folks who are live at the same time, so you get that feeling of being with other humans in the same space, which I think is really powerful.
It's a good one. We're getting absolutely spammed right now in the chat. Mr. Williams, I don't know what's going on with that spam here today, but Asmodai is actually saying, nice, I played Panzer Dogs. And we're having some other comments here in the chat. But
cool.
Let me know a little bit about building that community as you're kind of building the game at the same time. I feel like that's an interesting aspect of like maybe not having a fully built out game, but having the NFTs. You said you're adding staking today. So what does the community look like? Where are the kind of improvements that you made there? What are some things that you are looking to kind of upgrade?
Yeah, that has been a real learning experience for us because, as you said, that's different from sort of traditional game development where you're building out this community before the product is ready. It's more almost akin to, which people did for games, Kickstarters, right? Where it's like, here's what we're planning to build, here's how you can participate now, and here are the benefits that we want to lay out for you over time. And then keeping those people up to date on, what it is that you're building, how you're making progress, what the team is looking like. And so we were really fortunate in that the Solana community was really welcoming. We were able to do a lot of, different Twitter spaces with the top Solana projects. And I think luckily what resonated with the community for us is just that we are a team that, we raised $5 million. For us, it was important to raise enough money that we could say, hey, we're going to build this game no matter what. Like, we're here to deliver. We can have a 30-person team for 2 years and really churn out something that's going to be high quality and interesting for folks. And then that we have a team that's experienced in building out games. And I think also, like, partly why we chose skating and extreme sports is, there are a lot of shooters and there are a lot of sort of RPG games, but sports is kind of unique in its own way. And so we think it's been an interesting niche for people.
Yeah, so I want to dive in again to some of these features that you guys have now. So I can go into Magic Eden, I can buy some of these boards. What are the rarity sets? Like, what are these things for collectors to get interested in when it comes to what you have out there now?
Yeah, so there are a few different, and we'll have a layout on an infographic when we release staking because the rarities do play into your staking rewards. So in each collection, we have a few different rarities of both the materials, so like wood, silver, gold, and then there's some special materials and special boards. Like we have a holographic board. We have some boards with wings and jet engines and that kind of stuff. And then there are also some rarities which we'll lay out associated with the trucks and with the foreground and background art.
Now, you obviously with staking, you're able to kind of stake these NFTs and get in-game currency. Is there actual utility like right off the bat when it comes to the SPL token itself, the grind token here?
So we're building it out so that you'll be able to use that to upgrade your board and for other things in the game. But for now, it's something that you collect towards that, the game coming out. And then we're going to have some additional mystery box drops, which will also be NFTs that you'll get for staking. And those will be usable in the game as well.
Awesome, man. I want to like kind of hold your feet to the fire a little bit here with a release time for the game. Is there And is there a month that you guys are shooting for? I know you said you're getting ready for an announcement here in a month, but is there a possible date I could squeeze out of you on when you guys are thinking maybe the demo will go live?
I think the demo will go live in the next month and a half. The demo will go live in the next month and a half, so early summer. And then the full game we're aiming for this fall, and we're building out towards it. So the demo is sort of a vertical slice of what the game will be. So we're continuing to build features on top of that. But within the next couple of quarters for sure. It's not like 2 years out.
Yeah, and just to be clear, like this is this going to be a mobile game or is this a desktop game?
We're launching on desktop, on WebGL, so like within browser to begin with.
Okay.
And the main reasoning for that was just that's where we saw players were at in terms of Web3 in the Solana space. It's easy to connect your wallet. People understand that. But we're also building it with mobile in mind. So we're building all of our UI and UX so that people will be able to play it on mobile. And Unity allows us to easily port to a mobile build. So that's in the near future as well.
I've had multiple gaming founders here on the channel, and always somehow I'm bringing up Ready Player One. It was just a little cliche, but do you have opportunities to kind of look at different Solana projects and say, hey, maybe we can bring some assets from this game into ours or our assets into theirs? Have you had those discussions with other founders by chance?
We 100% have, and I love Ready Player One and Snow Crash and Neuromancer and these early visions of the metaverse, which I think are still, especially Ready Player One, is still the guiding light. I think that a lot of us developers are working towards of like it's starting to crystallize of what that could mean. Ownership facilitated by blockchain, a lot of the tech that allows for higher fidelity games to be streamed in real time and experiences to be more iterative and generate really big, beautiful 3D spaces. That's all happening at the same time. There's a really great blog series by Matthew Ball about this, about just sort of how like internet speed and tech capability and blockchain technology are all coming together at the same moment to start to create the possibilities of Ready Player One, happening in the near term. So that's definitely something we're looking into.
I feel like the conversations always lean bearish, though. They're always like the ability to bring every single asset into one place is almost like, from a game developer standpoint, like Bored Apes, for example. Like if I want to bring a Bored Ape, it's not just one Bored Ape. I have to create 10,000 unique Bored Apes as the game developer into my game. So I always feel like it leans bearish. Do you feel that way at all?
I understand what you're saying, which is, and we've run into this too, which is as things currently stand where everything's been built on different standards. So it's not like, everyone designed their 3D assets to be the same sort of avatar standard that's rigged in the same way so that, it can use the same animations that we bring in with our avatars into Unity. That is more difficult. If you look at a platform like Roblox, which is more centralized, obviously, and can dictate things from top down, they have an avatar system through which people can make money by designing avatar pieces that all fit a specific regimented guideline of what an avatar is in terms of what the rig size is, how many bones it has, different aspects of that 3D asset. And when you have a set standard that everybody can follow, that sort of facilitates what you're talking about.
So there needs to be like like basically a database there of all of these assets, these people like creating these assets on a set standard, as you said, but there needs to be a database people can pull from to then insert it in their game, is what you're saying.
100%. Yeah, like a metaverse standard for 3D assets, and then having a way that's like, oh yeah, easy. We'll partner with you guys. We just enable it, and then we can pull from your digital library because people are connecting their NFTs to this experience.
Why are so many people bearish on this then? Like that seems like such a simple concept that you just explained to me, but that's the first time that I've heard that. Well, let's just have everyone build on the same standard. That's
well, I think in the near term, that's what you're like, because people are like, oh, you're asking me to go partner with this group of developers, and they built everything totally differently, and we have to rebuild it all or it's in 2D, and how we translate the 2D into 3D with a hat and a pipe and whatever. So that's sort of where the tricky part comes in at the moment.
Yeah,
but I think that's going to change.
I want to get your thoughts on the other side here. That's I think one of the biggest announcements in the Web3 space that, as it's related to gaming, obviously, but one of the biggest announcements and one of the biggest releases that we've seen to date. Do you have any thoughts on what Yuga Labs is doing with the other side here?
I think it's really cool that they're starting to do that. And I know they've had conversations, before that they'd had conversations with a lot of top studios to try and figure out like, how do we bring this to life in a 3D gaming way. So I'm really excited to see what they build. I think that'll definitely be what sort of industry insiders and the press and, global business folks are looking at to see what's the possibility here. So I hope they do a good job. They're kind of like representing us all in what they're building. I think they will.
What do you think this release looks like? I'm using you as a soundboard here. What do you think this release looks like here on I believe the 16th is the scheduled date for the demo. Like, it's only been, I think, a month and a half since the deeds launched. They probably had this in the works for a long time, but a long time in quotations. Bored Ape's only been around for a damn year. So what does it look like on July 16th, do you think, just from your experience?
They've got the budgets to just have insane team sizes, but even just coordinating that many people in a short amount of time, I'd be impressed if there's any cool way to interact with others. I think you'll see the housing space. You'll see a lot of beautiful art and a space that's interesting to check out, but I'm not sure in terms of gameplay how much they will have built out at this point.
What other things are interesting you in the gaming space right now? I know you guys are heads down, of course, within SkateX. Is there anything else interesting you? I know GTA 6 was an announcement, potentially having some in-game currency, but anything within the Web3 space or even outside that's interesting you right now?
Yeah, what we're really looking out for now is like, who's building an experience that's accessible to people who don't have a wallet yet, or have MetaMask wallet, but then it's Solana-based game, or it's Dapper based on Flow, and then they're building a game through which any user who has any level of experience with Web3 can onboard through fiat currency. And then if you get deep in the game, there's some way for you to then interact more deeply with those NFTs and trade them. And so we've really been looking out for like, who's figuring that out and who's cracking that nut, because we think that's sort of the next leap in terms of building out just a massive user base in Web3 games.
I had this conversation yesterday with Jordan Lyle, who's been a serial entrepreneur in the space for a little while. He worked with Nifty. He founded Nifty's, which worked with the Matrix for their drop. They hit like 100K some type of mint there and kind of broke a record there, which goes along with, I think, what you mentioned with CryptoKitties and Dapper Labs. And the kind of conversation I want to ask you here is that kind of debate between scarcity and adoption, right? Like I think that Dapper Labs specifically has not made their investors a lot of money in the long run. Do you kind of see where I'm going with that conversation? Like, even though we want to go to mass adoption, it doesn't look like what the NFT space looks like now, which is let's keep it scarce and let's make some money for our investors and grow this like little economy that we have here within our community.
I think that for the investors too, growing the size of the community is only going to be good. But to your point, I think the thing that needs to be worked out is like, what are those scarce items that are still valuable? Anybody can have a Kia, but not everybody can have a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, and we're all still driving on the street, but some people have greater scarcity and perceived greater value of that item. And similarly, you see in games like everyone can have a sword, but only, one person can have, what was the name of King Arthur's sword?
Excalibur.
Excalibur, right? Like, so
I'm a nerd.
I think that's sort of the direction that we're heading in is, how do you build a system through which there are really rare items, but that doesn't mean that only the people with really rare items can play the game, because that's just not a sustainable product.
I should have asked you this earlier, but now that we're kind of touching on Dapper, why not build on Flow? Like, why in that decision between Solana and Ethereum and these other chains, and your experience having seen CryptoKitties, potentially talking with the team over at Dapper, why then build on Solana instead of Flow?
Yeah, we really like the Dapper team. I think with Solana, there was a unique situation where there were a ton of great tools that had been built for building games, doing NFT releases that allowed us to get out the door really quickly in terms of the blockchain technology. Dapper's obviously building a lot of those same things and with third-party groups, so I will be keeping a close eye on them going forward. I wouldn't count them out at all. But for this first release, Solana just seemed to us the right choice.
Awesome. I'm sitting here with Ben Tompkins, co-founder of Block Tackle. Guys, if you have any more questions, hit the chat right now. We're going to hold on to Ben for another 5 or 10 minutes here just to have some other industry discussions. But anything else interesting you right now? PFPs? I saw that you had a specific PFP on the profile. You were very Web3 native with that. So what PFP is that, and what other things are interesting you, man?
Yeah, me and my other co-founder Rob have SMBs, the Solana Monkey business, PFPs, which we're a really big fan of their DAO. There are a lot of especially within the Solana community, there are a lot of builders in that DAO, and so for us, it's been a cool space to kind of network and meet other folks, and they've supported us with having some Twitter Spaces and giving us exposure to a lot of folks in the Solana community. But there are a lot of PFP communities that I think are going to figure out ways to keep things interesting for their holders, although it'll be challenging, right? They got to find, what is going to be interesting over the next few months. And it might be finding utility in other games and Metaverse experiences so that people can have that up on their wall or walk around with, that kind of PFP on their head or something. But what do you think on PFPs?
I always lean bullish. I am a perma bull when it comes to this stuff, and where most of the people think that, I think in that micro timeline, yes, PFPs will pull back. I think the rest of the world is going to come online with wanting to have some type of digital identity, just like we talked about Ready Player One, where they're all walking around not as themselves, but something else. And at the end of the day, when you look at it, there's 7 billion people in the world. There's probably not going to be 7 billion PFPs. Although maybe we reach that number now, but there's going to be more people that get into the Web3 or to the Metaverse that want some type of digital identity that you mentioned earlier. So I lean bullish on PFPs, if you can't tell.
There's going to be a place for it for sure.
Yeah,
I think it's and it'll be interesting to see as these Metaverse standards evolve. You could totally see that once you have an avatar standard that works in a really popular Metaverse, and people make releases of PFPs that fit that Metaverse standard as a 3D asset, that's also a time, I think, when that's going to kind of take off again, and we'll see a lot more PFP projects.
I think that was the biggest takeaway, other than the dope stuff that you guys are building at SkateX. Like, for me, that centralized, although, we want that decentralized database, but having a database to pull from for these assets is definitely the key to interoperability. I have a question from Llama here. What part of Solana's development did you find to be the trickiest?
Honestly, we found like Metaplex, which built a lot of the Solana development standards, or a lot of the NFT standards, has been super helpful, and the stuff that they built has been really good and easy to use. For staking, we're using a company's software called Cardinal, and they've been really good partners for us as well, and we're launching that today, so we'll see how that goes, and you can see how you feel about their staking tech, but we're really liking it. So I would say there are actually just a lot of great third-party tools that you can evaluate and play around with. So I would say, as you're building stuff, see if there are other groups that are building things that'll do what you need to do, and you may have a few options to try out.
Asmodai is asking, do you plan to support / showcase graffiti art in-game?
100%, yes. So we have street artists who we partnered with, who we mentioned at the top of the show. Spray paint is something that we're working on right now, and there may be some spray paint items that are part of the mystery box drops that are going to come out as part of staking. And then we're looking at ways so that you can spray paint different things, including potentially other PFPs, onto the walls as you're moving around the server, and then other people who are live at the same time can see where you've made your tag in that space.
I've been extremely bullish on augmented reality here. Some guests have been shilling me on how augmented reality is going to bring us into the meat space, whereas Metaverse is kind of bringing us the other way. Do you have any thoughts on AR versus VR and maybe implementing that once you guys get mobile?
Yeah, I really like AR. I think there are a lot of great applications for it, especially in terms of geo stuff, being in the same place as other people. VR, I've been an early adopter. I've owned a lot of different VR headsets, and I've really enjoyed some of those experiences, but it continues to be a little bit clunky. I don't know if we're quite there yet for people to do mass adoption. And so for us, I think mobile will probably be a primary focus until we start to see that the majority of gamers are getting into VR, which will happen at some point, I think. I just don't know when.
Yeah, it's sad for me as well that VR will eventually, be adopted, but I have like motion sickness problems. When I throw on that headset, man, and I start moving, especially in like space environments, I'm just like thrown out of whack. So hopefully eventually they create something for us. Maybe I just have to take like a pill or something to calm me down. But anyways, Jack Webster is saying, what in-game rewards will SkateX have? So Jack, I don't know if you caught the early part of the episode, but we were talking about staking going live today for SkateX. There's going to be some cool rewards there for their grind token. But what are some other potential rewards down the line for like in-game features?
Yeah, so as you're playing and completing quests, there'll be ways to earn additional grind token, and then also some other additional in-game Web3 currencies that we're working on right now, and NFT items. So there could be a lot.
So there's other potential tokens that can be earned in the game other than grind?
We're working on basically how different systems have different resources that are used for them, in the same way that, in an empire building game, you've got, food and food for training troops, and then you've got wood for building houses, etc. So we're working on that, and so that there are different ways to earn, but definitely grind token is going to be the primary sort of soft currency going into launch.
I want to get the name of the game that you built earlier, Kingdoms of Camelot.
Kingdoms of Camelot.
I'm interested in your experience there building like a resource. I'm sure there were some resource management things there. That's probably going to be involved in SkateX as well with this resource piece.
Yeah, so in those games, right, as you mentioned, there's just a ton of economy thinking that has to go into that. And Jay Jodway, who's our economy guy, worked on a lot of these empire building games as well. And so we're glad to have him here. But it is thinking through, like, okay, if we have way too much wood in the economy, we need to come up with something that's really intriguing for players to build with wood. Maybe there's a Tower of Babel that you build to like learn some new skill that's going to help you in the game. That was in Kings of Camelot, right? Or an upgrade to your castle that takes a lot of wood that's going to be attractive to people. And similarly in SkateX, it'll be, okay, maybe there's a new type of competition that you need to enter that requires a certain resource that's over saturated in the economy right now.
What Web 2 games, I hate using the term Web 2 games, just what games did resources really well from your experience? I need to talk with your economy guy, by the way. That sounds like a cool job to have. But what games can you remember, just in your experience, I'm sure you've done a ton of research, that have done resource management well, or like resources for the economy well? Or which ones did that terribly? Either one.
I think most games that have been around for a really long time have figured out how to balance resources effectively. The Machine Zone guys who worked on like Game of War did a really good job of this and figuring out how to create events that help to sync resources. We usually call it sinks, for resources that are oversaturated in an economy. But I think any sort of free-to-play game that you've played before has done a good job if they still exist. League of Legends. So there are a lot of great examples for that, I think.
I've been banned multiple times. It is a story on the channel from League of Legends. That one, obviously being one of the most popular games in the world, is a easy one to point to. That being said, I wish that marketplace was open more than anything. Maybe just because I play it so often, but that would be awesome to see an open marketplace for League of Legends. But that will probably be the last game to be approved as an open marketplace. All right, Ben, any last thoughts here on what you guys are building? Like any links you want to drop, or any thoughts on kind of the current NFT market? You let me know, man. I definitely liked the interview, but we definitely want to let you go as well. We're sitting at about an hour.
Thanks so much for having me. No, it's been great chatting with you. Just the closing pitch for us, we're a 30-person team comprised of AAA game developers. We raised $5 million our seed round. We're going to be here for the next few years, definitely building fun first games that leverage blockchain tech. We'll have staking going live later today in addition to our new rebranded website, SkateX.io, which is going live this evening. And
nice.
Please check it out.
Congratulations on that, man. Is there like a blog post, or can I go to SkateX.io to see like the actual staking mechanics or the actual like data there?
We'll send you the links right after this, so you'll have them.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, I had Ben Tompkins here, co-founder of Block Tackle. They are tackling their first Web3 based game here with SkateX. It was a great conversation. Thank you guys for tuning into the Nifty Q Show. If you missed it, you can just rewind it if you want to do that. We're on YouTube, obviously, but you can also catch us on audio platforms, Spotify and Apple Podcasts being the primary ones there. But Ben, great conversation, man. Look forward to staking some skateboards and hearing some Goldfinger here soon.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Later, man.